Started today. Hi, everyone. My name is Josefina Barrantes. I work for EPIC, the Environmental Protection Information Center. We're hosting this webinar with Power in Nature, the Conservation Lands Foundation, and Nature for All. I'll describe a little bit about Power in Nature first before we get into our grassroots organizing webinar. Power in Nature is a coalition of just under 300 different environmental and tribal organizations, community groups, and land trusts all working together to make 30 by 30 a reality in California. 30 by 30 is both an international and California state codified goal to protect 30% of land and coastal waters by the year 2030. Power Nature has 8 different regional groups and working groups for public lands, communications, government relations, freshwater, and equity. You can check us out at powernature.org and sign up for our statewide listserv by emailing info@powernature.org. And to sign up for our regional or work groups, you can fill out the Google form in the chat. And next, I will introduce our lovely presenters today, which are Margarita and Omar. Lopez-Pelayo is the California Senior Program Director at the Conservation Lands Foundation. She brings over 24 years of grassroots community organizing experience within the nonprofit sector and labor movement, and has led multiple coalitions and statewide campaigns, including the expansion of the San Gabriel Mountains National Monument with Nature for All. As an Indigenous, two-spirited woman of color, she honors Mother Earth through community self-empowerment and advocacy. Her heart is in advocating for outdoor equity, environmental justice, and public land protection. She founded Brown Mamas Outdoors as a way to encourage brown mothers and their children to build community in nature. And also, we are lucky to have Omar Gomez today. Omar is a program manager at Nature for All. He joined the staff after serving at the Nature for All Coalition chair. Previously, he worked at the Council of Mexican Federation, COFEM, for 10 years as the Director of Programs and Public Policy, where he coordinated the Community Networks program and was the designer of the Civic Promoters organizing model that has trained more than 800 community leaders in Southern California. He studied political science at California State University of Northridge and has more than 10 years of experience organizing the Latino community in California. Margarita and Omar, take it away.
Thank you for that. Um, all right. So we just wanted to again provide for you our email. So in case you want to reach out. Omar, do you want to hit the next slide?
Sure. I can get us started. So, thank you for that introduction, Josefina, and for the opportunity to present today. Um, so I'm with Nature for All. And Nature for All is an organization that started as a coalition that was working towards supporting and protecting the San Gabriel Mountains. And over the years, this became its own nonprofit organization that is called Nature for All, because we saw that protecting the San Gabriel Mountains was just not enough. Actually, a lot of the people that we were working towards getting support for this protection could see the mountains in their backyard all the time, but most of them had no access to these spaces, right? So, LA County, it's one of the communities with the highest need for park space and green space, and we are blessed that we're surrounded by these beautiful San Gabriel Mountains and also the Santa Monica Mountains. But the reality is that a lot of the people don't have access for it or don't have the full benefits of those large spaces. And the reality is that their communities are mostly, concrete, asphalt, and with little to no access to green space. So Nature for All is working towards achieving, the goal of making sure that everybody in Los Angeles, no matter where they live, they have equitable access to nature. And we work to try to achieve it different ways, but basically we have 3 pillars. That is the protect, connect, and create. The first part is in the spaces where we have so little green spaces. The number one priority is protecting what is already available, right? And make sure that future generations can enjoy it, but also building stewards that are going to be able to love and protect these spaces. It's hard to have somebody to be passionate about nature and protect nature when they've never visited those spaces. So it starts with that stewardship level, right? The next one is creating. We understand that locally we need to address this issue, and we work with the county, with the city, with different agencies to make sure that new parks and new spaces are being built or available. We're not like a construction organization. We don't get those projects happen, but we do a lot of the work to make sure that funding gets allocated so that these parks, these beautiful green spaces, these right ways, these meridians, because also in a lot of these spaces where everything is already built, where there's so much need for also housing, fighting for parks, it's hard. So we have to get creative and build green alleys and meridians that can provide some of that nature for a lot of these communities. And then the last part is that connection, right? So like I said, I think there's no passion to nature, there's no love to nature, there's no there's no stewardship if people don't have a connection with it. So even though, like I said in the before, right, most of us in LA are surrounded by mountains, we can see them out our window, out our backyard. The reality is that a lot of the people in our communities don't have access to it. So we work to make sure that people have connections to these spaces, whether it is through our programming that we have, or also increasing access to nature, whether it's a transit to trails programs and others that can connect people to those spaces. And I'll pass it over to you, Margarita.
Thank you, Omar. Just I wanted to do a little side note before I go on. I know for maybe some of us that know me, it might be confusing. Um, if you did not receive my email, I have transitioned. I was formerly with Nature for All, and I am now with Conservation Lands Foundation. So I'm going to share a little bit about Conservation Lands Foundation. Our mission is to harness the power of community-led advocacy and the Friends Grassroots Network to protect, restore, expand the national conservation lands managed by the Bureau of Land Management, BLM, through education, advocacy, and partnership. And okay, so Conservation Lands Foundation is working to protect more than 250 million acres of public land managed by BLM, which 85% are currently unprotected. So there is a lot of work to be done. Funded on the belief that America's public lands are best protected through the enduring dedication of local communities, which is our Friends Grassroots Network. And I will talk more about that later. And more than 18 years, we've been harnessing a national movement to secure protections through presidential administrations, Congress, and federal agencies. So, I I'm happy to share that just last night I came back from our Friends Grassroots Network Summit, which happens every other year. So a little bit about our Friends Grassroots Network, turning local passion into acres protected, right? And so we know from experience that durable public lands conservation requires local people who fight for the land day in and day out. Our FGN or Friends Grassroots Network is a national movement of more than 90 community-based organizations focused on protecting, restoring, and expanding national conservation lands. Some of these groups are all volunteer-led, while others have paid staff. They host hikes, undertake restoration projects, and serve as local sentries to protect the lands of the all the lands that we love and need. And so, if you see this map here, um, it's quite a few. A lot of them are California based, and so most of it is within the West, right? And it is a great model that we use and where we through the Friends Grassroots Network, we create people power and we make sure that we influence policy and continue to communicate with elected officials on protecting public land. Okay. All right. So collective power of our Friends Grassroots Network, we feel that diversity and impact of this national movement and harness the collective power of our Friends Grassroots Network. Two, one, rally communities in support of national conservation lands and other vulnerable public lands that need protection. Remind elected officials how much people value and depend on these special places. And we make sure that we bring local voices to influence all levels of government, from county commission meetings to Washington, D.C. So that's very much our model. It is a lot more complex than this, but this is the base. Okay. Our grassroots advocacy program, or in short, GAP, um, is basically a really interesting model because basically what it does, it provides access to tools, trainings, and other resources to our friends, grassroots network partners. Um, Friends enjoy webinars and capacity building resources designed to advance the community-based power building, effectiveness, and resilience of the FGN. Like I said, yeah, we have events like the one we just had, where we had over 100 people gather and were provided workshops and the opportunity to connect. And yeah, we also virtually provide webinars, and there's different subjects that we are able to share on. For example, some of the latest ones were interweaving tribal work and conservation. So we try to make sure that we elevate local voices also as part of our efforts for webinars. And yeah, so webinars are and events on organizational effectiveness, fundraising, grassroots advocacy, and other topics focus on advancing the community-based power, building effectiveness and resilience on the FGN. And then network resources. We have a library, right, available with resources for our FGN partners, recording of past trainings, webinars, and important resources. Um, for anyone that needs to go back and use that as a resource. Um, and some of the resources available are, for example, webinars or resources on championing diversity, equity, and inclusion under challenging circumstances, which is very much what we're living now. And then also there's funding and development opportunities. Funding opportunities can include first-time granting, re-granting, and educational workshops. Some of these are multi-year grants, yearly grants, mini grants, and we also have a program called Arts and Advocacy, and where we grant FGM partners to be able to work with artists, local artists, and using art and as a form of advocacy, and in order to educate people about protecting public land. And again, whenever possible, we provide information and resources for grants. And we also provide, for example, workshops on budgeting for grants and fundraising. Okay, next. I'm going to pass it over to Omar to share a little bit about the Nature for a Coalition.
So as I shared earlier, right? So Nature Flow started as a as a coalition that then turned into a hybrid that is now an organization, but we're also still a coalition. But the one thing that I wanted to highlight about important is that how Nature for All started, or the coalition, right? The San Gabriel Mountains Forever started, like in the early 2000s, as they were trying to build traditional environmental voices, that were trying to build a coalition around protecting and permanent protection of the San Gabriel Mountains in LA area. Realized that they needed a different approach, right? They were gonna have already some traditional environmental voices on the table, but in order for this campaign to be successful with the diversity and with the such large population in LA County, they needed to bring different voices. And if that diversity was not found in those environmental organizations at the moment, they thought about different groups, right? And that's how some of these voices came, right? So non-traditional environmental organizations that were recruited to be part of these efforts, right? And that's what we have. Some organizations like the one that I used to be part of, right? The COFEM, the Council of Mexican Federations. So this is an organization that works on immigrant rights and promoting access to higher education and making sure that kids, first generation immigrants, are graduating from college and other things. But that was a group of people that the COFAM had access to, thousands of people in the community that could potentially be part of some of this efforts. And the same with API Forward Movement, that is more of Asian and working with the Asian immigrant communities. That they focus more on healthy eating habits and other health issues. But all of this, at the end of the day, there was a way to connect all these organizations to this larger issue, that is this protection of these public spaces. The San Gabriel's I mentioned earlier, is 70% of the green spaces in LA County are the San Gabriel Mountains, right? So it's a really important piece of nature, and no matter what all these organizations were working on, it affected them one way or another, right? And somebody had that vision to say, we need to bring those non-traditional voices, because if there's not diversity in the group, like, we were not going to be powerful enough, right? And if you don't have organizations on environment that are already diverse in nature, then you need to be creative and find other organizations that their focus might not be environment, right? And bring them on the table. And Nature for All, as we started our nonprofit organization, we used to have one program that was extremely popular, and it still is extremely popular, is the Leadership Academy. So basically, this program is a 5-month commitment where it's a competitive program. People apply for it, and a few get selected, about 15 every cohort. We tend to do 2 cohorts a year. So they get selected. They go through this intensive training that is not only on environmental issues, but also we teach them about public speaking, civics, government, community organizing, um, um, advocacy, leadership development, and others, right? So we're really building a base and giving them like the tools and the skills they need to be organizers in their communities. And it was very successful program. It still is very successful. At the end of the day, at the end of the program, they still had an opportunity to present a project that they would like to do in their community, and they will have like $1,000 to implement that project. So again, very successful. But the organization was basically engaging people at 2 very extreme levels, right? So we were either getting a lot of the people in tabling events that will sign our petition, but then most of those people, because we were with them for a minute or less, like the next day after that signing of the petition, they don't remember about us. They really are not doing any action on this, right? They signed the petition and that was it. And then the only other option that we had was for people to commit to this 5-month program, right? That is like, okay, sign up for this program where you're going to commit weekly for 5-6 months to join this intensive program. And for most people that have never been involved on issues, it's very intimidating. It's really high ask, and it requires that you have the capacity for it, right? And in a lot of our communities, most people don't have it or don't have it right away. So we decided that what we needed to do was create this level of engagement with different tiers or different steps, where people will find a step where they were comfortable, whether it was because of knowledge, because of current capacity needs, but that you will find a space where you can start. And also, not only that, but a lot of the organizations are very successful in implementing one program, but then there's no follow-up, right? There's no engagement. So people go through your program, and maybe once in a while you engage with them again, but there's no continued engagement. So one of the things that this ladder that does, that we created, is that there's continued engagement, right? So we recruit you, you find yourself where you fit. Maybe you start at level 2, or maybe you have more capacity and more interest, and you start at level 3, and that's fine. But then there's also, once you finish that, there's always a step next. There's an opportunity to continue further in your education, to continue engaging in the organization, right? And if you can see, So there's opportunities for you to start right from level one, 0 or 1, that is like very short engagement. Maybe we meet you at a petition gathering, at a tabling event, and we talk to you about this issue. You sign our petition, or maybe a public presentation or an orientation where it's like somebody gives us 20 minutes to talk about nature flow, and we provide a little bit of information that is more like an introduction. But then at the level 2, the idea is that people that are going to that we meet there, we're recruiting them into the next level, right? And the next level in this case is like a 3 class cohort with a trip. So it's not a huge ask. In most cases, this is done in 2 weeks or a month at the most. But it's not a huge ask. The class time is about 3 hours of class plus the trip that is sometimes it's like a half a day trip. So for a lot of people, it's a doable, it's a manageable opportunity for them to learn about environmental issues, to learn about water, stormwater, follow the water, where the water comes from, but also about local issues with greening communities and needs to provide more green spaces naturally, locally, right? So, that's kind of like that level 3, the 2, and then level 3 is the one that we kind of already had. But then we had to develop more, right? So for those that are graduating, that were so excited with us and wanted to continue, we didn't have a next step. So we started creating these additional steps, right? And we put together this, that we're going to talk a little more about it, but this promotor model, or in our sales we call them ambassador model, but it's basically a way to get community members to be the spokesperson and be really the outreach tool of the organization. We train them. We provide this train of trainers and additional capacity that they need to make sure that they feel comfortable representing the organization and talking to the community. So one of the things that is really important as you're, if you're doing any outreach, and probably a lot of people you already know, but if the people that you're trying to outreach, the people that you're targeting in those communities, whoever's it's on the other side of you, at your table, if they look like them, if they speak like them, they're more likely that they're going to engage with them, right? So they're more passionate about the issues because they live in those issues, right? So it's easier to talk about to people in the community about lack of parks and green spaces, because also those ambassadors that are in our program live those issues, right, on a daily basis. So it's easier to connect, easier to convey those messages. So this ladder that we have put together, that we created, you can see there's a split between the 3 and the 4. Because basically at this level is where people kind of decide whether they want to go into that promoter route, that is like more of a professional development, that they really want to be part of the organization, gets compensated, and we'll talk more about this, right? But get paid for some of those actions that they're going to be doing, so those activities, those trainings, those tabling events, or go more into the volunteer part of it, right? That is more about, once in a while, want to stay updated with what Nature Flow is doing, maybe be invited to a refresher, have some opportunities to maybe hear from professionals in the field, to have like maybe find career paths opportunities for them. But the ones that go into that ladder for the level 4 and level 5, it's people that that want to be part of the organization and want to work with the organization more closely, right? So obviously, as the levels keep on going up, the pool keeps on decreasing, right? And that's what we design it this way, right? We know that the larger numbers are going to be in the bottom, and the top we have less and less. As they jump, they have less and less. But what we want is to make sure that whether it takes you a year or 2 to jump from level 2 to level 3, that's fine. But we want to stay engaged through all those levels so that we don't lose you after that, after you finished your classes in level 2. And when you're ready to jump into that level 3, that we're still engaged, with those individuals, so that they do that jump, right? And then they grow with the organization. And that's a lot of, the work that we do. Obviously, a lot of this work is also based on base building and advocacy. And we also have created in each of those levels of of leadership, different opportunities for advocacy, right, and engagement. So whether it is from signing a petition, And then as the levels go, the ask is higher, right? So maybe it starts with signing a petition, but then the next step is like maybe make a call to your elected official. And then the next one is now you get to join us and you visit the elected officials, but also we're going to take you to testify in a public meeting, whether it's at the LA County level, at the LA City Council, or any others, right? So we're going to take you to testify. Then, as this keeps on growing and the leadership keeps on growing, at that level, now they're building relationships with local elected officials. I was just sharing what with my boss earlier that sometimes when I need to have a meeting with some of the local elected officials, it's easier for me to ask some of our ambassadors to request a meeting, sometimes for me to do it, because to me, they see me as a staff or somebody that is getting paid to do this. So they listen, right? They do it, and we're building a relationship with them. But the moment that an ambassador reaches out to the office, they listen and they pay attention and they provide those meetings right away. But because they see them as somebody within the community that has a lot of power, and that they're known, that they're respected because of the work that they do in the community, so they listen to them and they build relationship with those leaders, with those local electeds, and that's what we want, right? So as we're building this grassroots effort, it takes more time, right, than the grass tops approach, but it's one that is really elevating the voices of the community. So I think I'm gonna, I'll skip this one. It's just, the more about the roadmap for how, how people go into each of those levels until they become a trip leader or or an advocate. The one thing that I will mention is that we're also, as we're working on that development for our ambassadors or from staff, we're constantly trying to figure out what are some of the needs that they have that we are not currently providing, so that we keep that continued engagement and continued growth. So last year, for instance, we provided with the ambassadors for the first time certification on computer literacy, because this was an issue that we saw that they were struggling, and if we want them to start exploring a career path on environmental or work for an environmental organization, this was a skill that they needed to have, right? That they were lacking of. So we identified another group that could provide that certification for them. We also provided for the first time, because we do for our leaders, for our ambassadors or trainers, but for the first time last year, we provided certifications in Spanish. The first time here in the United States, nobody else had done it before, but we did for wilderness first aid certification, and we also did it for certified interpretive guide. We actually had to go to somebody from Mexico to do that training because we couldn't find one person here in the United States. But it's also looking into what our ambassadors need to continue that development and continue that professional growth. Margarita, I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, so we definitely know that the promotora model, ambassadors in this case for Nature for All, works, right? The promotora model is a community-based social change model where trusted individuals within the community serve as liaisons to provide culturally relevant support and education. This promotoras, embajadoras act as bridges between community members and essential resources such as healthcare, education, and social services, sharing information, providing support, and advocating for community needs. So this is a model that has been used not only in the conservation movement, environmental movement, but also it actually started within health advocates who definitely saw the need for community members to have a say on the health of their children. So I wanted to share, this is a picture of some of Nature for All's ambassadors. And so when Omar mentioned that sometimes, they're your biggest power as a community base, right? Because Omar and I can have years, decades of experience in organizing, and we might be well respected, but sometimes we would struggle, right, to get that invite or to get that meeting confirmed with an elected official. And so it is always so beneficial to be able to have a strong embajadora, promotora group that they might pick up the phone, place that call, and within less than 24 hours, they have secured for you a meeting that is very much needed. And this was on Rep Luz Rivas' swearing event. All the embajadoras were invited, and it was beautiful because the moment they walked in, it was like, oh, they're here, and everybody very much respects them. Omar, next. So key features of the promotora model, like I said, culturally sensitive promotores are members of the community and share similar life experiences, communication styles, and cultural background, making them highly effective in building trust and relationships. They speak Spanish. They're the mothers, they're the grandmothers in the community, and they're relatable, right? Community-based promotores are not outside experts, but neighbors and not natural helpers working to empower their own communities from within. So they might not have that like university background, right? Degree, but they are very much big time helpers when it comes to phone banking, canvassing, that kind of thing. Broad scope, while originally focused on health, the model has expanded to address other critical issues like education, financial empowerment, social justice, environment, and conservation. Bridge to resources. They connect community members to a wide range of services and institutions, helping to overcome barriers such as language, lack of insurance, and unfamiliarity within the system. So we definitely saw this strong. We see this during crisis in our communities during COVID, right? They were the ones connecting community members to essential resources and mutual aid needs. During the California wildfires, right? They were providing information and resources for families. Hey, like basic needs, right? Like family needed access to um, I don't know, food, right? And so they will connect the community. And most recently, we've seen it with the ice raids, right? Ambassadors have provided resources, but also healing circles and just a sense of comfort and being a bridge to community resources. And empowerment promotoras are agents of change who provide education, build skills, and motivate individuals and families to take action and improve their own lives and communities. So they are truly respected and they're seen as leaders in the community. So when, for example, Nature for All had their public comment for the expansion of the monument, um, but buses full of people were able to show up because the embajadoras had a strong connection to the community and were able to mobilize quickly. Omar?
Thank you, Margarita. If your organization is ever thinking about, building a model like this, just know that obviously it's not, it's not something that it gets built in months or in a year. It's usually like a 2 to 3 year to really, fulfill that wheel where you have a base of promotoras in your system. But it's definitely worth the time and the investment. I always say, right, the promotoras in our case, they're the heart of the organization, right? They're the they multiply our reach of the organization by the tenfolds, but in a meaningful way, right? So I know, like, there's tools of social media where you can, multiply your messaging and get it across a lot. But this is like a meaningful connection. Like, they tend to do one-on-one connections. They do lasting connections with the community that will become, your members, followers, that they'll support you, and then in the future be maybe future members of your organization or future promotores of your organization, right? So, but also, in this model, we do have some roles and responsibilities for those, the promotores or the ambassadors, right? and because they play an important role in the organization. And I talk about some of those already, but in the education part of it, in our organization, the ambassadors do our community-based building training. So they go through extensive trainings, and then they can provide classes into to the community for our public lands protection, greening communities, and all those topics that we work on. Information sharing. We provide them tools and training opportunities so they can learn how to outreach and how to network in their communities, so that they can provide information, whether it's one-on-ones, door knockings, presentations, that whatever is needed in the community to elevate the issues and talk to people. They're able to mobilize and get people into action, to whether it's speaking in public, provide testimonies, sign petitions, or what we're doing, right now, and we've done since the beginning, the get out the board efforts, right? That might not be specifically just tied to one specific campaign, but it's just more about that civic awareness and increasing civic participation. So, since the beginning, we have been able to do canvassing efforts with our ambassadors, where they knock on thousands of doors and talks to voters about the importance of voting. And then share the last point, right? But the capacity building is important. We need to make sure that they have all the tools they need to be successful, but also that there's a growth with it, right? That it's not you completed the program, you're done, but that understanding that they're always learning, and there's always new tools and new opportunities to increase their knowledge, right? And then for the organization, there's also some roles and responsibilities that on our end, right? Some of the other organizations that have a similar model with the promotoras, they tend to do it on maybe on a volunteer base, or on a very small stipend base. We don't. We Once you reach the promotor level, you're brought into the organization as a program assistant, and this is also providing fair compensation, to the participants, to their communities. It's showing that workforce development is also about investing in the communities that you're working, because a lot of these ambassadors are from those communities that you're doing the work. So you're elevating those communities, and maybe providing a pathway for a lot of those families, a lot of those mothers, like Margarita said, right? A lot of our ambassadors, maybe they used to work in factories, or they were childcare workers, and they share that I've never envisioned myself doing this type of work, right? Working in an office doing this work, and it's part of that workforce development, right? I talked about those certification efforts, and make sure that they're constantly growing and having all the tools and the skills that they need to be successful, not only in HFRO, but whenever an opportunity comes for them to move into another space, right? And I think just the last thing about that fair compensation, and we do have a volunteer base, as I mentioned, but the way that I usually divide, whether it's a paid opportunity or a volunteer, on my book, a volunteer opportunity is like, hey, I have an event, and I invite people, and I have a signing sheet, and if you can come for an hour, you can come for an hour, and it's up to them, right? Whether they can come for an hour, 2 hours, half an hour, that's volunteering. When I'm asking somebody, hey, can you be there from 8 to 1 p.m., and they're leading that effort, they're leading that tabling event, that's not volunteer anymore, right? And we need to make sure that we're compensating those efforts. So yeah, I think, and then the next part about it, that I wanted to talk is just that approach, right? We talked a little bit about grass stops and the grassroots organizing, and the importance about the people power. I want to say that this process, or this approach, it takes longer, definitely, right? I've seen it. Some of the larger organizations, they get their advocacy efforts through some of their staffs that they have in Sacramento or in DC, or they hire consultants that help them pass some of the legislation, some of the policies that they want. And yeah, people can do that. But this is a lot more rewarding, and it's also about building the community when you do this approach. It takes longer, obviously, but I think the time and the efforts are definitely worth it, because you're elevating those voices, elevating those stories of the people that are affected by those issues, right? It's not a third person talking on behalf of them, but it's actually the people that are suffering or are going to receive the benefits that are actually now the spokespersons for those issues. I and there's also the last point here that I wanted to make is that this needs to be better appreciated, and more money from foundations needs to come to this, right? I often have this conversation, but I think the grass tops approach is, it's preferred by a lot of organizations, and a lot of the money goes there. But and sometimes I feel like this grassroots effort and organizing that is, it's more organic, and like I said, it takes more time. Sometimes it's not has appreciated financially, by foundations as it should have. So but we've seen some changes, and we've seen that organizations and foundations are moving more into this approach because it's a more genuine effort, and it's a long lasting, right? It's people that are staying there on this issue and can continue advocating and changing. A lot of these policy issues and those campaigns are, take years to change. So you have here a sustained, base, that is going to be constantly pushing and advocating for those issues. Margarita?
Yeah, so when it comes to conservation, right, as you all may remember, not too long ago, President Biden expanded San Gabriel Mountains National Monument, and we also had a designation of the Chicuela National Monument, right? And so, great moment, right? The Chicuela National Monument was established in January 14th, 2025, protecting more than 624,000 acres. Sorry about that. I think there's a typo there, but yes, definitely a moment of celebration. And then the San Gabriel Mountains National Monument was expanded by 105,919 acres on May 2nd, 2024. The original monument designation protected 346,177 acres in 2014. So definitely we want to give credit to most definitely coalition building, right? But also most important to the community who are closest to the public land, right? And in this case, we did see promotoras put a lot of effort into educating community, mobilizing community, right? And showing up for public comment. Um, and the case of the San Gabriel Mountains National Monument, we saw Nature for Us ambassadors did do a big push, and also GoFem's promotoras did a big push when it came to the Chicuela National Monument. Omar? So grassroots organizing and conservation means really it's acknowledging that there is people power and community gathering. Uh, Grassroots organizing and conservation means that we can not just ask people to sign a petition or show up to do public comment if we haven't invested in making sure that they get access to those public lands that we're asking them to protect, right? So, um, a lot of the experiences that we have with community members, right, who are um, people of color, migrant communities, is that they, culturally are well connected to nature and have appreciation for nature, but sometimes due to financial hardship or transportation issues, right? They don't necessarily have access. So, Nature for All, COFEM, right, and many other orgs provide that, right? Provide access to nature and taking youth to the river, right, or to the mountains or to the desert. That's what grassroots organizing and conservation really means. Acknowledging that there is power and people power. There is power and people power and bringing people together. Omar, you want to add to that? Oh, okay. And so Black, Indigenous, and people of color in conservation have been the backbone of public land protection. In the case of Chiquala, right, the local tribes have been essential in pushing forward with the protection of Chiquala, the establishment of the Chiquala National Monument, and so has been the case for the San Gabriels, right? Um, Youth have also taken a central role in this. We have some pictures here of high schoolers, right? That um, they have join for maybe a hike and then realize that they feel really passionate about this. They go back to their high school and inform others, and many of them are supported by sharing not only the knowledge but asking their family members and their friends and their neighbors to sign the petition to show up for public comment. Omar? And so with that, we wanted to also take a minute to talk about the importance about being a good ally to BIPOC people in conservation. As you all know, it has been an incredibly difficult time with this current administration, and so we have seen ICE raids happen within the communities, but also now, most recently, right at parks and at just public land in general, right, in the monument area. And so part of what we're asking for is that we remember that a lot of this land protection was possible by promotoras, right, embajadoras, youth, families who are not being a target, right? And so we want to continue to be able to count on that support and continue to have them be the backbone, right, of many campaigns. We need to be good allies, and we need to remember that we can no longer pretend this is not an issue in conservation, right? And so, wanted to also add, not too long ago, right, national parks this started having $100 fees for those who are not U.S. citizens. And it's also a way just to make sure that people remain in fear and are alienated from nature areas and from the benefits that nature provides. So part of our work and part of the work that our partner COFEM is doing is educating people about know your rights, educating community, educating partners, organizers about the needs to just know basic know your rights and how to react to a situation if you're out there with I don't know, 15 people or youth or parents out on a trail, right? And like you encounter ICE activity, what do you do? So part of that being a good ally is knowing what to do, how to react, what to say, and how to, as much as possible, protect the community that you're taking to a hike. Omar?
No, so I think just I'll stop here so that we have a little bit of time if there's any questions.
This was such a wonderful presentation. I learned so much about the work that y'all have been doing for years. This was great. I have a question while other people think about theirs and they brew a little bit. Specifically for the Nature for All Leadership Development Ladder, do you know like the age range of participants? I'm just curious.
So it depends. So we seem to have like two buckets. So we have a lot of people that are maybe in their 40s to late 60s. So that's like one group, and they tend to be not all of them, but a lot of them are immigrant community. And then we have also a lot of the high school and recently college graduates between that range also. And even though it's the same ladder, the programming is a little bit different. The activities are a little bit different, right? Their interests also it's a little bit different, right? So we do some activities a little bit different, but so we have a pretty diverse range, I would say. We don't do a lot of work with kids other than the trips, their family trips that we do have, but the organizing model, I say the earliest that we start is probably 16.
Awesome. That's so cool. I figured it was a broad range, but that sounds perfect. Michael?
Great. Omar and Margarita, fabulous presentation. I've been writing down notes the entire time. I want to thank you for that. My big question is, how do you move somebody who comes and signs a petition at your table, and maybe will come to a public comment if they have email, comes to them? How do you move them to become a more involved volunteer to begin to help with the whole movement? We're a group of volunteers. We're a group called Airport to Park here in Santa Monica.
Yeah, I think it's constant engagement. I think when um, we show up in big numbers and we say people power. It's not something that, just it's not like a switch, right, on and off thing that we could get big numbers for a public comment per se. The ambassadors prior to the San Gabriel's public comment session, they, they were constantly getting updates. Hey, just so you know, it might come any minute. Make sure you're going back into the community and keeping people informed. So it's like phone banking. I would join their meetings and give them updates on the campaign. And so it's not something that like they show up to one workshop or one hike and the conversation stops until we need them. It's an ongoing conversation, and also it's also understanding that you want to show up for them whenever they have a need. So, for example, there was times where an ambassador might call me and say, "Oh, like, I need help with filling out this application for, I don't know, right? For a specific need, right? Like food aid or whatever it is. I'm going through this hard time, and you're an active listener, right? And you're making sure that it's almost like a family model, right? Like you're constantly visiting. And so I think that's a big part of it, right? Like remembering that nourishing these relationships, it's years of work. Some of the embajadoras, Omar, well, I'm not sure what's the oldest embajadora. How long? Like 20 years?
So there are some that were with me when I was at CoFam. So that's 2008 that it started. So yeah, almost 20 years now. Yeah. And just to add, I think everything that Margarita said, I agree. Like it's a constant engagement opportunities. But the other part about like how you take them to turn into action. So there's a couple of things. I think one of the things that we do is like you can show a lot of people in a presentation, but when we do the educational tours, I think it's very helpful because it's like it really shows the urgency and the need for some of these issues, right? I can take you to an area so you can see, the how some communities are being flooded and the importance of capturing stormwater, or I can take you to the mountains and then we can talk about how there's no path or there's no access to trail to those mountains or public access to those spaces. So unless you come in a group or you already know where you're going and you have a good car that can take you all the way up, you don't have access to them. So then, so then they can connect those dots and it's like, yeah, why I was never brought here, and something needs to happen, right? We need to do something about it. So the educational component that happens in classrooms is really helpful. But if you have opportunities to match this with also on the field activities, we one of the things that we do that people love it, we go with heat guns, the temperature checking guns, and we go in the summer or sometimes we even go in the fall. Last class that we were doing on leadership development, we had that tour in, I think it was close to December, and we were reading, in some areas, some of the playgrounds or some of the benches for the bus, to the bus stops, temperatures in the 120s, in December, right? Like, or higher. So obviously, like, that makes you want to take some action. So being creative about how you are exposing people about some of these issues, and because they already know about some of these issues, but that's the other part, that you have to show them that you are there not to check a box, but that you really care about the issue, that you really care about the organization. And the moment that they see that you're there because you're passionate about the issue, then they're gonna stay with you. There's one area, and real quick, because I know we're out of time, but that where we were trying to start a base, but we noticed that there was a lot of trash in the community, and it was not part of really of the plan or the work that we were going to be doing. But one of the things that we did is we organized a community breakfast that it was also a cleanup, and 100 plus people show up in the community to clean up. And obviously, it's not the main purpose of the organization, but through that effort, we showed the community that we care about the community and that we wanted to improve it. That it was a genuine effort that we're there, right? And I think that's the key.
Omar, can you press the next slide just so it's available for folks? We wanted to just share our QR codes for our websites. This is a way to, if you're able to volunteer or donate, it's always a way to help the work that we're doing. And then I just wanted to add one last thing, right? I think why Nature for All and other organizations have been so successful at keeping community engaged is really focusing on the humanity of those individuals, right? So if you're gonna invite people for a public comment that's gonna be from, asking them to invest on travel time to like the actual event, 6 hours or whatever it is, right? You're gonna make sure that they're fed, and you're going to make sure that you're going to provide interpretation, and you're going to make sure that they have, I don't know, coloring books or little things for the kids to be entertained. So I think those kind of gestures really do go a long way, and they'll talk, right? They'll go back into the community and say, "Oh, you know what? Like I feel welcome. Oh, I feel taken care of. But next time you come with me. Next time we go together, you know?" And so that's how you go about growing people power.
This was such an awesome presentation, Margarita and Omar. Thank you so much for your time. Um, we can all give them a round of applause for taking an hour out of your day. This was great. And I'll email out the recording to all the registrants as well as these links to support their wonderful work. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.